I'm delighted to join you today and starting with a short disclaimer. Everything I say today is a reflection of my personal opinion and assessment. The name of that report, which I think was published 3 days ago, the official name is very long. I think it's called the Interim Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment. And it was compiled, as the name indicates, rapidly, which means quickly, by three agents, the UN, the European Union, and the World Bank, right? And so these are rough metrics, but to make a long story short, they're saying what? They're saying over 10 years, which is a fairly long period of time, they'll need 15 billion to rebuild or repair buildings and housing. That's a big block. And there's a 19 billion, a little more, $19 billion dollar block of money needed to make up for social and economic losses, including health, education, and commerce. What does it mean? Basically, it's the opportunity cost, is the fact that things now have been destroyed in Gaza. So production, welfare, blah, 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 which should have been there, is atomized, destroyed. So we need to make up for that, the lost opportunity cost. That's 19 billion. And there's another block, also of $19 billion, which is to rebuild big infrastructure. What does it mean? Energy, transportation, highways, roads, and ports and airports. So all of that is $53 billion. It's a figure. To be honest with you, no one knows for sure. So they came up with a rough ball game figure, and they're saying that a big third of that money, more than a third, will be deployed or used in the first 3 years, right? Why not? It sounds reasonable. My personal opinion is that these figures are fairly optimistic, and I think in reality it may cost a bit more. So in reality, I think we're looking at least 80, 90 billion dollars. So perhaps, the World Bank wanted to be conservative. Perhaps they didn't want to frighten potential donors, because of course the money is not going to come from Israel, who did all the destruction. It is not going to come either from the US. I think people are expecting that most of the money will be forked by European and British taxpayers, as well as wealthy Arab Gulf states, right? So they're expecting Europe and the Arabian Gulf to pay for the damage, the destruction, which happened in the Gaza Strip. So maybe they came up with a nice, smaller figure than what I think the real metric will be over time.
Okay, coming on to the Riyadh summit, which has just, of course, taken place. How does that pave the way for the Emergency Arab Summit, which is coming up in Egypt?
I think it's mostly symbolic. It's great that it happened in Riyadh, because after all, theatrics plays a part in political and geopolitical symbolism. So it's happening on the heels of another more important summit, in my opinion, held 4 days ago between Marco Rubio, representing the US, and Sergei Lavrov, representing Russia. And we know that on the menu in Riyadh 4 days ago, when America and Russia discussed various issues for a full day, they did not speak only about Ukraine and Eastern Europe. So probably the Russians and the Americans already, when they were in Riyadh, they discussed a little bit the Gaza-Israel issue. Of course, today, the Pan-Arab summit today in Riyadh was devoted solely on Gaza. Of course, there is no communique, because today's meeting in Riyadh was under closed door. And so there's no communique. There's just a few signals, minor signals, sent by advisors or academics in Riyadh, Doha, Cairo. But the real thing is the Cairo summit. To make a long story short, I think what the Arabs are messaging to America and Israel, they are messaging the fact that they are united, because of course there's that old, Qatari, Saudi Arabian rivalry, and Qatar, attended the meeting and was greeted, warmly by the Saudis. So showing up a united Arab front, because of course behind the unity, there is the fact that in the Gaza Strip and the West Banks, and on the one hand, you have the interests of Qatar, Turkey, and Iran, and on the other hand, you have the interest of the Arabian Gulf, excluding Qatar, and on the other hand, you have Israel's interests, right? So not all's interests are perfectly aligned, but at least today, there was a pan-Arab show of unity in the face of Trump's Gaza Strip, casino and gambling project, so the Gaza Riviera. So because they're not happy about the idea of the Gaza Riviera, but there's another factor. The Arabs are not happy about the idea of transferring 1 million or 2 million Palestinians, even if it's temporary, right? Even if it's only for 1 year or 2 years, transferring them to Jordan and Egypt is a big no-no for the Arabs, right? And they are united on that. They couldn't care less about Trump's dream of casinos and Riviera, but it's the idea that to build a deluxe, huge series of resorts stretching over that 50 or 40 kilometers of land, you need to expel most of the population first. I think that's unacceptable for the Arabs because, of course, the Arabs view the things differently. They have in their mind two big traumas, the 67 and 48 traumas, where many Arab civilians were expelled brutally by Israel. And I think the idea that now a third expulsion would happen is really something that goes against Arab public opinion.